Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. After 30 years of a lifeless, one-sided marriage, I was unexpectedly reborn. I went back to the second year of my marriage to my military husband, James Cooper. At this point in time, James had just brought home a delicate and needy woman named Emily, along with her young daughter, Pearl. I was 3 months pregnant. Then, knowing exactly what would unfold next, I wrote my name in advance on the official registration form to secure my legal status. Then I went to the hospital and chose to terminate the child growing inside me. In this lifetime, I will no longer be the selfless, regretless servant to James Cooper and his old flame, Emily. I will dedicate my body and soul to serving my country instead. And while I'm at it, I'll sincerely wish that James and Emily, those shameless adulterers, spend the rest of their lives rotting in each other's misery. What I hadn't expected was that James refused to divorce me. He wanted to trap me all over again, just like in the previous life, so I could keep slaving away for him and Emily. If that's the case, then he shouldn't blame me for being ruthless this time. North City in December is bitterly cold. The wind cuts like knives, and even a drop of water freezes solid. The stabbing pain in my hands left me dazed and chilled to the bone. That's when I realized I was standing at the edge of an open-air wash platform in the howling wind. In front of me were 2 large basins overflowing with clothes that needed washing. I turned my head, surveying the surroundings, familiar yet strangely distant. The old buildings and era slogans around me made me think I might be dreaming. But as my eyes landed once more on the bright red cotton coat in the basin, followed by a few pieces of children's clothing, and I looked down at my hands swollen, raw, and covered in chilblains, I was sure of it. I had truly been reborn. I was back in the winter of 1981. It was the second year of my marriage to James Cooper. And at this very moment, I was 3 months pregnant. The clothes in front of me were a cruel reminder that I was washing laundry for Emily and her daughter Pearl, James' so-called white moonlight. In my previous life, Emily had supposedly twisted her wrist and couldn't move it. James, feeling sorry for her, arranged for me to take care of both her and her daughter. Every day I prepared delicious meals for them, cleaned their living space, washed their laundry, and even gave them my own precious rations. Saccharin, white rice, flour, meat, eggs, all so they could stay healthy. I used to love James Cooper. I treated every word he said as law. I worked hard and wholeheartedly to fulfill my duty as a military wife. I was helpful to others, considerate of their needs, and always put myself last. I truly believed that James was simply being compassionate to a struggling single mother and child. I thought that as a military wife, this was part of my moral responsibility. Only later did I discover that Emily had faked her injury. She just didn't want to wash clothes in the middle of winter and risk damaging her delicate hands. She used me, a foolish, obedient woman willing to do all the work without a word of complaint. And she didn't stop at using me for chores. Emily also had her eye on my job. James, who did everything she asked, immediately gave it to her the moment she asked. Then he was promoted for his military service, and Emily took the opportunity to rise with him as his de facto wife. She even had her daughter Pearl push me over when I was 6 months pregnant, causing a miscarriage that left me permanently unable to bear children. I lost my job. I lost my future. In that era, a woman without children or a career was seen as worthless. I knew I wasn't good enough for James Cooper. I was terrified he would abandon me, so I tried even harder, working myself to the bone just to be useful. But my worn-down, joyless appearance stood in stark contrast to Emily's radiant beauty, her rosy lips, and glowing skin. Naturally, James grew to despise me more and more and didn't want to see me around. Eventually, he sent me back to the countryside to take care of his parents. He called it doing my part so he could focus on serving the nation. Back then, I thought I owed James everything. I felt grateful. I worked tirelessly to care for his parents. But because I couldn't bear children, they often insulted and scolded me. Meanwhile, James freed himself of this burden and lived happily in the capital with Emily. They presented themselves publicly as husband and wife, enjoying every bit of life together. For 30 years, I stayed in the countryside and devoted myself to taking care of James's parents. After they passed away, I went to the capital to look for James, only to find that he and Emily had been living together all along, calling each other husband and wife. That's when I realized what a joke my life had been. Now that I had truly come back, I kicked over the 2 basins full of Emily and Pearl's clothes. Whoever wants to wash them can do it, because I'm done. I strode straight back to the place James and I shared. As soon as I walked in, I heard the door next door creak open. Emily peeked her head out from her warm, cozy room. When she saw me, she forced a fake, sugary smile. "Oh, Mary, you're back. Did you finish the laundry?" I glanced at Emily's disgustingly fake face and slammed my door shut with a loud bang. I locked it. Then I marched straight to the bedroom, crouched down, and pulled a box from under the bed. Inside were all the meat and grain coupons I had saved from the past 2 years of marriage. Every bit scrimped and saved from cutting back on food and clothes. There were also fabric ration coupons and some cash in the box. Some of those meat, grain, and fabric coupons, along with a portion of the money, had already been used by James Cooper to support Emily and her daughter Pearl. They constantly wore new clothes, ate white rice, fine flour, eggs, and meat in rotation. They were well-fed, plump, and glowing with health. Meanwhile, I suffered from malnutrition. My hair was dry and yellow, and at 56 I weighed barely 90 pounds. My clothes were patched over and over until they could no longer be worn, and only then did I throw them out. In my previous life, I scrimped and saved only to benefit others. That will never happen again in this lifetime. I took all the fabric, meat, and grain coupons along with the money out of the box and stuffed them into my pockets before heading out the door. In this life, even if I were to give these things away, I'd rather donate them to strangers than let Emily and her daughter benefit from a single cent. I donated part of the coupons to a few struggling military families in the compound who genuinely needed help. Then I took the rest to the public supply store. Without hesitation, I used the fabric coupons to have 4 sets of clothes made for myself. I also used the meat coupons to get 3 pounds of pork ribs, eggs, and vegetables before heading back home. As I walked back into the compound, I spotted James Cooper from afar. Tall and upright, he stood with his back to me, talking to Emily. Emily was holding her hand, eyes glistening with tears. When she saw me approach, she called out sweetly, "Mary, you're back." James turned around. His expression was stern as he immediately questioned me. "What's going on? Why did you leave the clothes outside on the ground unwashed? And why did you ignore Emily when she spoke to you?" I stared silently at the man I had wasted more than 30 years of my life for. At this moment, James Cooper was still young. His features were undeniably handsome. In my past life, I was obsessed with that face. I had once vowed to go through fire and water for him, no matter the cost. But after living and dying once already, seeing that face again, once so intoxicating, stirred no love or longing in me. All I felt now was disgust and hatred. Seeing that I remained silent, James furrowed his brow and barked at me more harshly. "Why aren't you answering me? I asked you a question." Noticing his tone grow harsher, a flicker of smugness passed through Emily's eyes. In a soft, sweet voice she chimed in. "Mary, did I do something to upset you? If I did, you can just tell me. I'll change. I promise." The old Mary never knew how to defend herself. Her foolish mouth seemed glued shut, and she would let Emily frame her however she wanted, never speaking up. But this version of Mary, reborn and fully aware, wasn't going to be that stupid again. I looked around at the others in the compound who were returning home from work, and raised my voice deliberately. "Comrade Emily, it was my fault that you injured your hand and couldn't do housework. I truly wanted to help you, washing your clothes, cooking your meals, and cleaning up your home. But unfortunately, my body just couldn't handle it." My raised voice drew the attention of everyone walking by. They stopped and turned to look at us. James, noticing the gathering crowd, tried to silence me, but I ignored him and continued even louder. "I fainted while washing your clothes. I was lying on the ground for a long time, and no one came to check on me, even though I'm pregnant. If this continues, I'm afraid not only will I lose the baby, I might not make it either." Only then did James finally seem to remember that I was pregnant. "If you're pregnant, why didn't you take a break?" "I wanted to rest," I said with mock innocence. "But didn't you feel sorry for Comrade Emily's injured hand? You told me to help her out." These past few days, she couldn't do anything with her hand, so every chore in the house fell to me. It's all my fault. I'm just too weak. My body just isn't up to the task. I take full responsibility. I stood there, face full of self-blame, loudly apologizing and admitting fault. More neighbors had come over by now. Mrs. Lee, the director's wife, looked at me with concern and spoke first. "Mary, you silly girl, pregnant in this freezing weather, and still doing someone else's laundry. What do you expect us to say?" Mrs. Xiao, the mother of Wen Shu, followed up. "Exactly. Other families pamper their daughters-in-law when they're pregnant, but you're not even taking care of yourself, and you're out here doing chores for others. Aren't you worried about your baby?" "I was just concerned about Comrade Emily," I replied. "She hurt her hand and still has a child to take care of. Life isn't easy for her." "You need to worry about yourself first," Mrs. Jiao snapped. "Just look at yourself. You're pregnant and frail. You need rest and you need nourishment. Don't you know that?" After saying that, she cast a pointed glance at Emily, who stood there rosy-cheeked and well-fed. "She looks perfectly fine to me. Her hand doesn't seem injured at all. And even if it were, why should someone else be doing her chores for her? What a joke." They only dared to act this way because they knew I was a naive, soft-hearted girl who was easy to bully. Emily's face turned bright red as everyone spoke. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she stomped her foot, covered her face, and ran back into the house. James saw this and immediately looked pained. He glared at me and chased after her. Seeing all this, Mrs. Xiao snorted. "Shameless little thing." Mrs. Lee, the director's wife, sneered too. She turned on the waterworks right in front of everyone. "Sure, what a performance. What a waste that she's not on stage." I put on a wide-eyed, innocent look and said loudly, "Comrade Emily isn't like the rest of us. She's from the city, you see. She's not used to being treated unfairly, not even a little bit." Mrs. Xiao spat in contempt. "That kind of act only works on someone soft-hearted like you." Then she looked at me seriously and said, "Mary girl, don't you have any opinions of your own at all?" "What kind of opinions?" I asked with fake cluelessness. "If you keep being this foolish, your man will get taken right out from under your nose." "What?" I stammered, covering my mouth. "No way. That can't be." "Oh, don't be so sure," she said, shaking her head. "You better keep a close eye on James. That little fox might just lure him away." "No, that won't happen," I said quickly. "They're just friends. James only feels sorry for her because she doesn't have a husband. He just wants to help Comrade Emily. That's why he gave her and her daughter our meat, grain, and fabric coupons. He even gives her 50 yuan every month." "What?" Mrs. Jiao and Mrs. Lee both widened their eyes in disbelief. Still playing the fool, I naively spilled everything about how James had been helping Emily and her daughter. I dumped it all in one go with an innocent face like I had no idea what I was saying. Mrs. Jiao and Mrs. Lee stared at me like I was from another planet. Their eyes filled with pity and they just kept shaking their heads. Knowing those two, it wouldn't take long for word of James Cooper's affair with Emily to spread through the entire compound. Feeling satisfied after venting, I returned home. I cooked pork ribs and steamed eggs to give myself some nourishment. Dinner was ready quickly. 2 big bowls of rice with rib soup and steamed eggs filled me up. I felt so much better, stronger, more energized. After cleaning up the dishes and scrubbing the pots, I lay down in my room and began thinking about what I needed to do next. Based on the timeline, I knew it was almost time for my job to be made permanent, just like it had been in my past life. Back then, my official work registration form had been filled out by James Cooper, who wrote Emily's name on it instead of mine. His excuse was that she needed the job more than I did. Emily replaced me and became an official employee. After that, she and James continued their affectionate relationship side by side for years. This time, I won't be stupid enough to hand over what's rightfully mine. If James Cooper is so concerned about Emily, if he wants to take care of her and her daughter for life, then so be it. I'll help them out. I'll terminate this pregnancy and divorce James. With that decision in mind, I drifted off to sleep. I didn't know when James came home that night. When I woke up the next morning, to my surprise, I found him in the kitchen making breakfast. As I stepped out, he placed breakfast on the dining table and called out, "Mary, come eat." I walked over and sat down at the table. James handed me a pair of chopsticks and said, "Mary, we still have some grain, meat, and fabric coupons left, right? Go get some later, and bring them to Emily. It's so cold in the winter, and the clothes she and her daughter have are too thin. They'll freeze." Emily and her daughter had several outfits they rotated through, all made of good fabric. Meanwhile, the cotton coat I was wearing was the same one from our wedding, just one coat worn for 2 years without replacement. And yet, James didn't seem to notice at all. His kindness toward Emily and her daughter was painfully real. I felt a bitterness rise in my chest. Lowering my head, I silently sipped my porridge without saying a word. James took my silence as agreement and continued. "Also, Pearl is still growing. We can't let her go hungry. Give them all the meat coupons too." That was the last straw. "We don't have any more fabric or meat coupons," I said, unable to hold it in any longer. "What do you mean we don't have any?" James frowned at me, puzzled. With a gentle, almost condescending tone, he said, "Mary, you're a soldier's wife. You need to put the people first. Serve the needs of the people, fulfill what the people wish for, and care about what the people care about." I took a sip of porridge, sat down my bowl, and slowly asked, "When you say helping the people, do you mean helping anyone in need or just Emily specifically?" James's face stiffened. He had never imagined that the dopey, compliant Mary he knew would ever say something like that. I pretended not to notice the awkward look on his face. Counting on my fingers, I said, "The family to the west, Mr. Kiwoo's, they're really struggling. They have 3 kids with barely any clothes running around barefoot in the middle of winter. It's heartbreaking. As a military wife, I can't just watch them suffer. So I gave them the fabric coupons to buy winter clothes." I continued. "And then there's the family to the south, Officer He's place. His elderly mother is sick, and there are 6 or 7 people under one roof. I heard they haven't had meat in days. They're all skin and bones. If anyone needs help, it's them. So, I'm planning to bring them the meat coupons." James's face turned dark as coal, like he had swallowed something foul. He was the one always going on about how helping Emily and her daughter was just part of helping the people. Well, I just showed him what real people in need looked like. He was speechless, humiliated by my words. After breakfast, he left for the base without another word. I cleaned up a bit and went out too. If my memory from my past life was right, today was the day I'd receive my job regularization notice. At the office, the supervisor handed out the official application forms just like last time. In my past life, I had excitedly brought the form home to show James. I discussed it with him, and he casually handed the job over to Emily, claiming she needed it more than I did. She took my spot and became a full-time employee, staying by James's side ever since. That won't be happening this time. I neatly wrote my own name on the application form. No hesitation. After finishing that, I noticed another form on the table, an application to volunteer for duty in Beta Hang. I picked it up, wrote my name on that one too, and handed it to the supervisor. He looked surprised. "Why would you want to go to Beta Hang? Doesn't James have a promising future? He's about to be promoted to commander. Did he agree to let you go?" "This is my own decision," I replied firmly. "Right now, my heart is set on serving my country. James is a soldier. He'll definitely support my choice." "You two are truly something," the supervisor said, giving me a thumbs up as he collected the form. Before I left, he told me, "If you get approved, you'll need to depart on the 5th of next month." I glanced at the calendar. I still had over 20 days to prepare. That afternoon, on my way home from work, I ran into a few neighbors. Each of them tried to casually fish for gossip about James and Emily. 3 women together, and it was already a show. Their expressions were full of sympathy, and between the lines, they were all condemning Emily's shameless behavior. It seemed Mrs. Xiao and Mrs. Li had already spread the word. The entire compound knew. These neighbors had all received my help in the past. Now they sympathized with me and stood firmly on my side. They said Emily had no shame, that she bullied me, and even suggested that I file a complaint accusing her of sabotaging a military marriage. But I wasn't planning on doing that. As much as I hated Emily and James for their shamelessness, I had no intention of seeking revenge. If we could separate peacefully, I was more than willing to get divorced and let them be together. As long as they didn't cross the line, I wasn't going to make it ugly. Just as I was thinking that, one of the neighbors told me something unexpected. Emily had gone to the hospital during the day. She visited the OBGYN, Dr. Wang Ting Ting, and was in the office for a long time with the door closed. They wondered aloud if Emily might be pregnant, and warned me to be careful. I kept a straight face, but inside my heart turned cold. I knew exactly why Emily had gone to the hospital. James had just been promoted. He was about to do to me and my unborn child what he did last time. If Emily still hadn't learned her lesson, then she couldn't blame me for what was coming. I picked up my pace and hurried home. And sure enough, there she was, Emily, standing outside my door. Her eyes were full of defiance. As soon as I opened the door, she followed me right into the house. She shut the door behind her, and once she was sure we were alone, dropped the act entirely. "Mary," she said, her voice laced with venom. "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" I smiled and shrugged. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb," she snapped. "Last night, you said all that in the courtyard on purpose, and then you ran your mouth to Mrs. Jiao and Mrs. Li, telling them horrible things about me behind my back. Ruining my reputation with James? You're unbelievable. Ruining your reputation." I looked at Emily, feigning confusion. "What reputation are you talking about? You're a widow whose husband is long gone. And yet you're shamelessly clinging to a married man. You eat his food, take his money, and hang around him day and night. You call that respectable?" Emily never expected someone like me, quiet, passive Mary, to snap back like this. She was stunned, completely speechless. I sneered coldly at her. "Drop the act. I know exactly who you are. You're just using whatever leftover affection James had for you to mooch off him. You think you can string him along? Is that it?" I stared directly at her. "If James truly meant something to you, you wouldn't have left him for another man back then." Emily's face turned a deep shade of crimson, like she'd been slapped. "Mary," she hissed. "So this is who you really are? Pretending to be all sweet and pitiful when in reality you're a snake." I let out a sarcastic laugh. "Compared to you, I'm an amateur." I had never spoken so harshly to her before, but Emily clearly couldn't handle it. "Look at yourself. So plain, so dull. Do you really think James would have married you if I hadn't left? He only married you because he had no choice. He needed someone obedient, like a servant. He never loved you." I kept my expression calm, but her words struck deep. "Oh, and so what if James does love you?" I said, narrowing my eyes. "You're nothing more than a filthy rat sneaking around in the dark. If you're so confident, go ahead, tell him to divorce me and marry you." Emily's face turned blotchy red, like someone had spilled dye across it. She thought being pregnant gave her the upper hand, but I was about to prove her wrong. "You really think just because you're pregnant you can do whatever you want? Let me tell you something, Mary," she growled, stepping closer. "Even if I kill the baby inside you, James still wouldn't care about you." That hit hard because it was the truth. In my past life, Emily really had done it. She had her daughter push me down the stairs and caused my miscarriage. Was she planning to do it herself this time? Well then, no better time than now. I gave a cold smile, pressing in harder. "What a grand love story you two have, huh? Are you sure you love James? Or are you just using him as a backup plan now that your first choice is dead and buried in a box? James is on the rise, about to be promoted, and suddenly you come crawling back. Don't think for a second people don't see through you." I stepped closer, voice sharp and mocking. "You're already sleeping with him, yet you still want to act all innocent. Please, if you're going to be don't try to hang a saint sign around your neck." Emily looked at me like I was possessed. I had always been mild and soft-spoken, never one to lash out. And now I was exposing every last bit of her ugliness without flinching. Her face twisted in rage, contorted and hideous. Furious at having her true self dragged into the light, she screamed, "Mary, you want to die? I'll kill you today and your damn baby too." She charged at me, but I was ready. I didn't dodge. As she lunged, I kicked her hard. She'd aimed for my stomach. It was written all over her face. She wanted to kill my baby. What she didn't expect was that I'd fight back. My kick landed squarely and with force. Years of hard labor had made me strong, and Emily, who had never lifted a finger in her life, was no match. She screamed and collapsed with a heavy thud. I looked down at her, sprawled on the ground, sneering. Then, without hesitation, I dropped to the floor myself and let out a blood-curdling wail. Help! Emily attacked me. My stomach, it hurts. Oh, my baby. My voice rang out loud and clear through the entire courtyard. Within moments, neighbors came rushing out from every direction. They saw me lying on the ground, curled up, both hands clutching my belly, screaming like I was in agony. Mrs. Lee, the director's wife, was the first to reach me. Right behind her was Mrs. Shao. What happened? It was Emily, I cried out. She hit me. My stomach, oh God, it hurt so bad. I kept clutching my belly and screamed in pain. Meanwhile, Emily stumbled back to her feet, dazed. When I had kicked her, her nose had slammed into the edge of the table. Blood was gushing out, and tissues couldn't stop it. Hearing me cry out that she had hit me, Emily tried to explain. No, it wasn't like that. I'm Mary. But before she could finish her sentence, Mrs. Shao shoved her hard. Mrs. Lee, the director's wife, took the opportunity to kick Emily too. Emily yelped in pain and fell to the floor again. But no one around cared. Not a single person felt bad for her. Emily had spent all her time putting on a show for James, playing the pitiful damsel. But toward the other military families in the compound, she'd always acted arrogant and superior. I was different. I'd always been the nice one, never two-faced, always willing to help others. There were many in the compound I had helped in the past. People now rushed to my side to protect me. A few of the wives who'd never liked Emily even stepped right over her just to reach me. Quick, someone take Mary to the hospital. She's pregnant. What if something happens to the baby? Just then, Janu came back from a task. He immediately stopped his vehicle and helped lift me inside. As the car pulled away from the compound, I glanced back at Emily through the window. Her face was pale and dazed as she watched me disappear down the road. She probably never imagined that someone like me, quiet, reserved Mary, would turn around and strike back like this. After all, backstabbing and playing dirty had always been her specialty. She and her daughter Pearl would trip me up, and then run to James with their fake tears, acting like victims while he scolded me. They would laugh together in some corner, delighted with how easily they'd fooled him. In Emily's eyes, I was nothing but a stupid, hopeless woman, easy to manipulate, barely worth the effort. That's why she was confused now. She couldn't understand how I had changed so drastically, how I had finally pushed back. I curled my lips into a faint smile and laughed coldly to myself. This is just the beginning. All the humiliation I suffered in my last life, I will take it back one piece at a time. At the hospital, I was quickly taken to the OBGYN department. The doctor assigned to examine me was the same one who had performed surgery on me in my past life, Dr. Wang Ting. She was Emily's maternal cousin. Earlier that day, Emily had met with Dr. Wang. They'd shut the door and talked for a long time. I knew without a doubt they were plotting something. Dr. Wang barely gave me a proper exam before announcing that my condition was dire, that I was on the verge of a miscarriage and needed immediate surgery. She also claimed my uterus and fallopian tubes were damaged and might need to be removed. No one who had brought me to the hospital had medical knowledge, so they just followed whatever Dr. Wang said. I was pushed straight into the operating room. Dr. Wang began preparing for surgery just like she had in the previous life. Tears ran down my cheeks as I lay there. Mrs. Lee and Mrs. Shao, who had come with me, stood by my side, genuinely worried. "Mary, you're still young," Mrs. Lee said softly. "This is just an accident. You'll have children again in the future." I grasped her hand and whispered, "Please help me get Director Zhang. I need him here right now." Director Zhen was the hospital's top OBGYN specialist. Hearing mention of his name, Mrs. Lee froze for a second, then quickly nodded. "Wait here, Mary. I'll go get him right now." While Mrs. Lee rushed off, Dr. Wang was already hurrying to start the surgery. She pushed me into the operating room just like she had before. I could feel it happening all over again. My baby slipping away, the pain growing. I looked into her eyes and saw the same coldness, the same cruelty. Just as she raised the scalpel to cut into my fallopian tube, the operating room door burst open. Mrs. Lee had returned with Director Jenong. "Stop right now," he barked. "Let me examine the patient first." Director Jen had years of experience. Compared to him, Dr. Wong's tricks were nothing. Perhaps because of guilt or fear, Dr. Wong's hands trembled. She couldn't even hold the scalpel steady. I sobbed as I explained everything to Director Jenong. How Dr. Wong had declared my uterus and fallopian tubes beyond saving, and insisted on removing them. His face turned black as coal. "They're perfectly fine. Why would you remove them?" he shouted. "What kind of doctor are you?" He couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was a serious medical incident. Dr. Wong was immediately suspended and placed under investigation. I was transferred back to a hospital room. As I lay on the bed, tears poured from my eyes. I cried uncontrollably. In both lifetimes, I hadn't been able to protect my child. In my past life, I was powerless. I fell into Emily's trap, and that's how I lost the child. But in this life, I gave up the baby willingly because I knew Emily would never let me carry this child to term. After all, she was counting on becoming the next Mrs. Cooper. The doctor who operated on me, Wong Ting, was Emily's cousin. In my previous life, when her daughter Pearl pushed me down and caused my miscarriage, it was Wong Ting who performed the surgery. My child didn't have to die. I shouldn't have lost my ability to conceive. But Emily and her cousin destroyed my baby, and then ruined my body. And even in this life, I still couldn't protect my child. But this time, I wouldn't let Wong Ting get away with it. Director Zen was a responsible, ethical doctor. In the end, Wong Ting was dismissed for a serious medical violation. James Cooper didn't show up at the hospital until 3 days later. When he pushed open the door and walked into the room, a gust of cold air came in with him. I was half sitting up in bed as I looked at him. His handsome face was tight with a scowl. Not a trace of concern. No sorrow for the loss of our child, not even a flicker of regret. All I saw was irritation and disappointment. I felt my heart grow colder by the second. He closed the door and walked to my bedside. Without the slightest hesitation, he began to scold me coldly. "Mary, I always thought you were understanding, that you knew how to see the bigger picture. But I was clearly wrong about you. Just because I've been helping Emily, you let jealousy take over and started spreading rumors, ruining her reputation. Do you even remember what it means to be part of a military family? You've really let me down." He was disappointed because my actions had caused his precious Emily's cousin to be fired. Because of me, Emily had become the center of gossip. He felt sorry for her. Sorry that people looked down on her. That she was being judged. But I had lost his child. How could he not feel even the slightest bit of pain? James had no idea what was going through my mind. He just kept going, harsh and cold. "This was your fault," he said flatly. "After you're discharged, you need to apologize to Emily. Ask for her forgiveness." I stared at James without flinching. His young, handsome face overlapped with the version of him I remembered from 30 years later. Confident, powerful, untouchable. In both lives, he had never once truly considered me. In his heart, in his eyes, there was only Emily and her daughter. The truth I already knew didn't need confirming. I looked him in the eye and said clearly, word by word, "You're right. I don't care about the bigger picture. I'm not qualified to be the wife of a future commander. So James Cooper, let's get a divorce." His expression froze instantly. He looked like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. "What did you say?" I said. "I want a divorce. Let's file for it immediately." The moment those words came out of my mouth, James panicked. "Mary, what are you talking about? Why would we get a divorce? We're fine. We're fine." I laughed. "James, we've known each other and been married for 5 years. In those 5 years, have you ever cared about me? Do you know what I think? What I need?" He fell silent. He had no answer. Because the one making all the effort in this relationship had always been me. He enjoyed my endless care, how I revolved around him. Everything he said was law to me. He knew I loved him with a kind of desperation. Loved him down to my bones. I humbled myself for him. I gave him everything. So why would he bother caring about me? Why would he need to know what I felt? His heart had always belonged to Emily. He only ever wanted to give to her. Fine, then I'll give them both what they want. I finally spoke the truth he'd been hiding in his heart. Emily said it herself. She's the woman you've always loved. You've carried a torch for her for years. You'd do anything for her, so I'm setting you free. Let's get divorced. He was stunned that I had seen right through him, but he still tried to deny it. No, that's not true. Mary, you misunderstood us, Emily and I. It's not what you think. Oh, I raised my eyebrows. Then why don't you tell me what your relationship really is? You give half your salary to her and her daughter every month, and yet in all these years, you've never given me a single cent. You care so much about whether Emily has clothes to wear, about whether she and her daughter are warm and fed. I said, my voice calm but firm. But have you ever looked at what I eat? What I wear? James Cooper was momentarily stunned. It took him a while to respond. I just feel sorry for her, he finally said. There are plenty of people in this world to feel sorry for, I replied. Yet, I don't see you handing over half your salary to anyone else. Why is it only Emily? He had no answer. Shame and frustration flashed across his face. Mary, I know my actions made you misunderstand, he said. I was wrong. I admit it, but I'll change. From now on I'll be different. Let's not get divorced. The fact that James still refused to divorce me took me by surprise. He was so devoted to Emily, so why wouldn't he make it official and give her a legitimate place at his side? I couldn't understand it. If he truly loved her that much, why sneak around? Why not make her his wife outright? Either way, I wasn't backing down. The divorce wasn't up for discussion. If James wouldn't agree to it, I'd make sure he had no choice. I was discharged the next day. No sooner had I gotten home and rested for a few minutes than Emily showed up, knocking on my door. There was a scab across the bridge of her nose from where she'd hit the table earlier. It looked ridiculous, almost cartoonish. I gave her a cold look. What do you want? You're not welcome here. She glanced around the room to make sure we were alone, then sneered. Mary, I didn't expect this from you. I really underestimated you. I stared at her unflinching. You didn't come here just to say that, did you? Of course not, she said with a mocking laugh. I already know about your little stunt, saying you wanted a divorce from James. Not bad. You're smarter than I thought, waiting until now to pull that move. She leaned forward. You really think James won't divorce you because he cares? No, he simply can't. What do you mean? James was just promoted, and you know how strict party regulations are right now. Even the slightest scandal could ruin his future. So he's only staying married to you for the sake of appearances. I raised an eyebrow. So James is holding off on the divorce to protect his career. And that means you won't get your happily ever after either. Doesn't that defeat the purpose? My words wiped the smugness right off Emily's face. Watch your mouth, Mary. If you're bold enough to do it, you should be bold enough to hear people talk about it, I said. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with someone like you. Emily took a deep breath and said stiffly, I came here to inform you James can't divorce you right now, but to compensate me, he's agreed to give me your job. You're about to become unemployed, Mary. Oh really? Then we'll see about that. Emily left full of pride, thinking she'd won. She believed it was already settled, that she'd take my job just like last time. She assumed I'd given to James again. She thought she'd enjoy another comfortable life at my expense. She was dead wrong. That evening, James came home carrying bags of groceries, ribs, eggs, even fish. He was noticeably more pleasant than usual, talking to me, bringing me a bowl of brown sugar water, then heading to the kitchen to cook dinner. Soon, the table was filled with steaming dishes. He called me over for dinner. I said nothing, just sat down and ate heartily. He kept sneaking glances at me, watching my every reaction. Finally, once I'd finished eating and put down my chopsticks, he cleared his throat. Mary, there's something I need to say. I nodded and looked at him. He hesitated, then said, last night, I stayed up thinking about everything. I realized how wrong I've been. I shouldn't have let my sympathy for Emily get in the way of how I treated you, my wife. I was wrong, and I'll change from now on. I'll try to keep my distance from her. I stayed silent, just watching him quietly. Then his tone shifted. Mary, Emily doesn't have a job right now. She's raising a child all by herself, and it's really hard. As soldiers, it's our duty to help the people. That's how I see it. If Emily can get a stable job and support her daughter, then I'll have no reason to keep helping her. So, would you be willing to give her your official job appointment? I couldn't help but laugh. James's words were almost identical to what Emily had said. If I hadn't lived through all of this before, if I didn't already know what would happen, I might have foolishly believed him. What a shame. I shook my head. Why should I give up my job for Emily? I said calmly. There are better ways to solve this. Confusion flashed across James's face. What other solution? We get divorced, I answered. Then you can focus all your time and energy on taking care of Emily and her daughter. Isn't that the perfect outcome for everyone? James's expression soured. I already told you I won't divorce you. Why not? I asked with a pleasant smile. Why won't you divorce me? You're my wife. Things are fine between us. Why should we get divorced? You think things are fine between us? I laughed bitterly. If you had even the slightest bit of regard for me, you would have cared about the child I lost. You would have felt even a little pain for the baby we were supposed to have. But no, you didn't. Your heart is entirely with Emily and her daughter. You worry about them being cold, being hungry. But for me and for the child I lost, there's nothing. Not a single tear, not a single ounce of grief. I looked him dead in the eye. Tell me, why should I stay with someone like you? His face darkened. He didn't even try to hide it. Mary, you're being unreasonable. Unreasonable? I scoffed. Isn't it your behavior that's caused this? I've worked hard without complaint, made sacrifices for you and her, and you think that should be enough for me. I should just accept it all. I told you it's not like that with Emily and me. Our relationship is innocent. Why won't you believe me? I don't care what kind of relationship you think you have, I said coldly. All I'm saying is I'm not giving up my job. If you want to be with Emily so badly, the best thing you can do is divorce me. You've been promoted. Your salary has increased. That should be more than enough to support Emily and her daughter. Mary, I told you I'm not divorcing you. Get rid of that idea right now. He slammed down his chopsticks and stood up. Military marriages are sacred. Since you married me, you'll be my wife for life. With that, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. I sat silently in the chair, my heart growing colder by the second. I'd thought that by saying all this, by making it so easy for him, he'd leap at the chance to end our marriage. But instead he refused. He dared to throw around words like sacred military marriage, as if that justified everything. Why was he doing this? Deep down I knew James didn't love me. He never had. He just didn't want a scandal to affect his career. He wanted me to hand over my job to Emily. He wanted me to keep acting like a loyal servant, caring for his parents, making life easier for him while he lavished everything else on her. The next morning, I went to my workplace. The supervisor called me into the office. Mary, he said, hesitating. It looks like your transfer to Beta Wong may not happen after all. Why not? Your husband, Commander Cooper, came to see us. He said, your primary identity is as a military wife. Your first duty is to support your husband. Your job here comes second. Commander Cooper said he needs you here so you can give him peace of mind while he focuses on his work. The moment he said that, I understood everything. In my past life, I'd obeyed without question. That's how James had taken my job and handed it to Emily so easily. In this life, I didn't submit. So he used his authority to pressure me. If James wouldn't agree to divorce, then I couldn't get out of this marriage. I had no power, no means to fight him directly. He may not control everything, but as long as he played the card of stabilizing the home front, I couldn't move an inch. I left the office and walked home in a daze. Emily must have heard the news. She was waiting for me, clearly excited to watch me suffer. The moment I stepped through the gate, she mocked me with her sharp, screechy voice. Didn't you say you weren't going to give up your job? Still feeling confident. I looked at her smug face and had to resist the urge to slap her. Just as I was about to raise my hand, she smirked and said coldly, "What's the matter, Mary? Back already? I remember that in my past life, you weren't like this at all." Whatever urge I had to strike back faded the moment Emily spoke. I took a deep breath and looked squarely at her. "What are you trying to say?" Emily sneered. "What? Pretending she's from a past life? You dare say you're not from another life? I stayed calm as she continued. In your last life, you were meek and obedient. You worshipped James like he was the sky. Whatever he asked, you wouldn't even dare contradict him. And now you dare defy him and plot against someone like me. If you hadn't been reborn, who would believe you'd have the guts? She went on mocking me. Of course you've been reborn since you kicked me in the stomach. If that hadn't happened, you wouldn't be living this miserable life now. In your past life, you lived in comfort for decades with James. Elegant homes, servants, gourmet feasts, and now nothing. You're cold, poor, and worn out. Her disdain was obvious and biting, but fair. After all, in her past life, she had enjoyed all that luxury because of James. Now here she was living in hardship. And yet somehow she thought she deserved more. That got me thinking. If she's been reborn too, then maybe we should lay everything on the table. Tell me, do you want my job or are you angling for that place at James's side? The role of Mrs. Cooper? Emily laughed coquettishly. Why not both? You can't have both though, so which will you pick? I looked at her sharply. Let me remind you, the job is grueling and exhausting. Where's the prestige in that? Being the wife of a commander, that's rare and glorious. James is still young with a bright future ahead of him. Don't you want that kind of life? Emily hesitated, her eyes flickering. She realized what her real goal was. I can help you get what you want, I said. As long as you agree to divorce James Cooper. I keep the job. You marry him and walk into the spotlight as the commander's wife. Your career will rise with his. Emily, calculating in her eyes, nodded slowly. How will you help me? She asked. I smiled coldly. Let's just say your wish will be granted early. 2 nights later, something happened in the compound that shocked everyone. Emily and James Cooper were caught in flagranti in our bed, totally naked. At midnight, my screams and sobs echoed through the darkness. Lights turned on in every home of the courtyard as neighbors emerged. When I stormed through the door, Emily tried to stop me. What are you doing? We had an agreement. James stood stunned and confused. What is going on? They scrambled to cover themselves, but I had already snatched their clothes and thrown them outside before they could reach them. James flew into a rage. Mary, give me back my clothes. There must be a mistake. Let's talk this out. As much as I wanted to give him a chance, I couldn't. My cries turned louder, more frantic. Soon, the room was packed with onlookers. Neighbors whispered in shock. My God. Commander Cooper and Emily out in the open like that. How can this be? James tried to explain, stumbling over every word. But Emily, naked and humiliated, crawled toward him, seeking protection in his arms. James, surrounded by the crowd, must have been mortified. He pushed Emily away, covering her with the blanket. Emily, stay back, he said, obviously humiliated. He turned and looked at me, seeking help. This has to be a misunderstanding, Mary. You have to explain it. I wiped my tear-stung eyes. My hand was trembling, stained with spring onions from dinner spilled earlier. Tears streamed down my face. You've been cheating on me. Not just this once. I always knew you two were having an affair. I croaked, but I had no choice. I cried as I reported everything to the political commissar, who had rushed over. I told him that James Cooper and Emily had been having an affair for a long time. It wasn't just a one-time thing. I had discovered it long ago. Emily had even pushed me and caused me to miscarry. James knew I lost the baby and that I was injured, but he didn't care. He was afraid it would affect his career, and even warned me not to talk about it. He threatened me and demanded that I give my job to Emily. I never said that, James snapped, his voice rising in protest. Mary, stop making things up. If I'm making it up, I said firmly, go ask my supervisors. I was about to answer the party's call and volunteer to go to the Northeast. I had already decided to divorce him, to let them be together, but they still refused to leave me alone. Tears streamed down my face as I spoke, my grief heartfelt and raw. The other military wives in the compound stood up for me, speaking with sympathy and outrage. That Mary, she's too kind, one said. Look at the clothes she wears. Just rags. Yeah, and look at that Emily woman, another chimed in. No job, but always dressed like a peacock, eating the best food. I heard Commander Cooper gives half his salary to her and her daughter, someone added. Meat tickets, grain rations, fabric stamps, all for them. Poor Mary survives on dry corn buns. And don't forget, a woman whispered. Even when Mary was pregnant, she still had to do Emily's laundry. Voices rose one after another, filling the room with support. The commissar's expression grew darker by the second. Comrade Mary, he said gravely, you've endured great injustice. Military marriage is sacred and cannot be violated. And that doesn't just apply to military spouses. It applies to our soldiers too. We will investigate this thoroughly and make sure you get justice. James Cooper was suspended and put under investigation. The military leadership took the matter seriously and immediately assembled a team to look into it. James' favoritism toward Emily and her daughter had always been out in the open. People were all too eager to talk. The story about Emily pushing me, causing my miscarriage, was also common knowledge. And James going to my workplace trying to have my job transferred to Emily. That was undeniable. James' defense was weak and unconvincing. The leadership was thoroughly disappointed in him. His bright career came to a sudden halt. As for Emily, she was detained for violating military marriage laws. She was stunned, completely blindsided. She kept screaming her innocence, claiming I had set her up. She said I had agreed to let her and James be together. She said I was cruel, vengeful, and jealous of their relationship. But no one believed her. After all, who would walk away from a husband with a promising future like James Cooper? Everyone saw me as the honest, beautiful one. Everyone knew I had been bullied by those two. I was the one who did all the hard work like a beast of burden and never complained. Emily fell into despair. In the end, she asked to see me. I agreed to visit her at the detention center. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale and waxy. The moment she saw me, she tried to lunge toward me, but her hands were cuffed and she fell back weakly into the chair. Mary, she cried. Why did you do this to me? Why did you set me up? I stared coldly at her. You still don't know why, even now? What did I ever do to you? She said, shaking her head. Tell them. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. You and James weren't happy together. Don't take it out on him. He's a high-ranking officer. He can't afford to be suspended. I let out a bitter laugh. Why would I lie to the party? I asked. You two destroyed a military marriage, committed adultery, violated discipline. Those are the facts. But you gave me permission. You gave me the opportunity, she stammered. You're doing this on purpose. You're taking revenge. Finally, Emily realized the truth. You're vicious, Mary. You want to ruin us both. You won't even leave us a way out. I nodded slowly. I never planned to destroy either of you. I just wanted a divorce. I just wanted to serve my country. But you and James wouldn't let me go. Emily wanted to kill my child. She had planned to use her cousin, just like in the previous life, to make me a woman who could never have children again. Her malice was boundless. She was a monster. And James Cooper, despite me offering him a way out, despite me initiating the divorce to give him what he wanted, still refused to let me go. He coveted my job. For the sake of his career, he chose once again to sneak around with Emily in the shadows. They thought I was a fool. They still wanted to control my life. But why? I had only done what I should have. I was only standing up for the child I had lost so tragically in my past life, for that poor girl Mary, from another lifetime who had died without justice. In the end, Emily was sentenced to 3 years in prison. James was discharged from the military. I seized that moment to file for divorce, and surprisingly, the proceedings went smoothly. The day I received the divorce papers, I left with the work team headed for the Northeast. For over 20 years in the remote, harsh frontier, I followed the party's call. Wherever I was needed, I went. I gave the best years of my youth to the land. I never once complained. Never once cried out from hardship or exhaustion. Life in the Northeast was tough, yes, but it was also rewarding and fulfilling. I received multiple commendations for my service. My name appeared in newspapers and on television. 20 years later, still carrying my mission, I returned to the capital to receive an award. The country had transformed, vibrant and modern. Walking through the brightly lit streets, I felt overwhelmed with emotion. I was no longer the confused, defeated Mary of my past life. In this life, I had lived with meaning and purpose. The night before returning home, after the award ceremony, my fellow honorees and I stopped by a store to buy gifts for our colleagues. As we passed a hotel entrance, we noticed several armed police officers subduing a man. They were handcuffing him. On the ground lay a woman's body, blood seeping from underneath her. She was naked, lifeless. My eyes swept over the man being restrained by the police. Something about him made me stop in my tracks. I looked again. It was still that familiar handsome face, but now marked with age and weariness. His hands were in cuffs. Our eyes met. He froze. His lips trembled. Silently he mouthed two words. I turned my gaze away from him and looked down at the woman lying on the ground. Her pale, heavily painted face overlapped perfectly with the image of Emily in my memory. I never thought I'd run into them again, especially not like this. I gave a small cold smile, tightened my grip on the gift bag, and quickly walked away. In life, paths cross in unexpected ways. But this time the encounter was not like before. In my last life, I stood on a bustling street lit with lights, watching James Cooper, full of pride, standing beside the elegant and dignified Emily, their arms entwined, flanked by guards. Back then, I longed to get close to ask for an explanation. But before I could, a passing car hit me and sent me flying into the sky. In the end, life doesn't change. We come into the world with nothing, and we leave the same. The only thing that matters is the choices we make. And I was grateful that in this life I had made the right ones.